Welcome. You are listening to a special episode of TLR's podcast. In this series, we are talking to the reviewers who brought you TLR's 55 most reread books. Each episode breaks down the list into specific favorites for that reviewer. You can find more reviews and best of lists on thelesbianreview.com. Be warned that we are talking spoilers in this episode. With me today is the amazing and awesome Anna, who is a sound engineer extraordinaire and reviewer at TLR. Anna, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Today we're talking about your selection for our 55 most reread books. So these are two books that you reread more often than any of the other books, right?
Exactly, especially this time of year, because I've start getting into that whole, family and being in love and being very romantic. And these two books actually kind of encompass that a little bit more for me.
It's cold where you are over the December period.
Yes, it's really cold. So basically I just sit here and read a lot of the time.
And so you want that sort of heartwarming story about love and being together and, finding that someone.
Or refinding that someone, as one of my books says.
Also true. Okay, so let's crack right along. So your first one is Second Chances by M.J. Duncan. So this is the refinding.
Yes, this is totally the refinding. I remember when I picked this up, I was still kind of learning more about lesbian fiction at the time. So it was definitely one of the earliest ones I picked up. And I remember reading the synopsis and I was like, okay, this actually sounds really cool. It was like thinking about, if I had like that college sweetheart that something happened, is like, what would I do? And I kind of intrigued me. And I was like, okay, let's go with that. I didn't realize it was also her first book when I picked it up. But as soon as I read it, it's like from the first line when it's like she felt a high heel get thrown at her head. I was like, okay, this is going to be interesting already. I already know what I'm in for. And just going through and reading about Charlie and Mac and like what they went through when they were like, why they broke up, and how Charlie's just like, she totally knows that Mac was the one, but just timing was off. And so fate has a way of bringing them back together, where Charlie's like, I'm going to go do this, year-long professorship. And lo and behold, it just happens to be the same college that Mac is at. What a coincidence and everything. And it's just funny to watch. It's also very endearing to watch them reconnect. Like Charlie's wanting to, Mac is obviously just like, no, we've done that, been there, done that. Don't want to go through that again. Don't want to go through the hurt again. But then Charlie just starts pulling out all the charm. Those are my favorite scenes, is when she just goes in. It's like she's trying to be all friendly and flirty. And it's like you just start seeing these little things where she starts letting it slip, like she really does want this again. And it just slowly starts to wear Mac down. And I'm just like, those are some of my best scenes. It's like I'll reread those scenes over and over again, where she's like bringing her food, bringing her stuff from her travels. And I'm just like, this is just so awesome to read and to be like so into. And it's like, and then they get together and everything. And then it just gets so much better, but one of my favorite things is that they do address the past, and it's like, what happened? And then they both realize that neither one was completely at fault and neither one was completely innocent either in what happened between them. I mean, yeah, Charlie was tired of being in the closet because of who Mac's father was in the university. And that, that's an understandable feeling, because it can be very suffocating even for the person's partner. But she never understood, and Mac just felt like she couldn't do anything. But then Charlie points out, we could have gone to another town. We could have gone on a trip somewhere. And we could have held hands, we could have done this, we could have done that, and maybe that would have helped salvage the relationship. But at the same time, I think what's meant to be is meant to happen, so that way they can grow and they can learn. And that's what I love about this story. And it makes them all the better when they get back together later. So it's just one of my favorites. I actually did pick this up when you made this list. I was like, I'm going to go pick this up again and read my favorite parts. Is what I'm going to do.
I totally get that. I've actually picked up a couple of the rereads books that I put on as well, and I've been, going through them, and it's actually been just like coming back to an old friend. It's been so wonderful. Duncan, though, does really good chemistry.
She really does. I've noticed that through all her books, and I've loved seeing as she writes more and gets, better. It's like even her most recent one that just came out is like, I was kind of worried about the chemistry because it is age gap. And usually with age gap, you always kind of wonder, is the chemistry going to be there? And it really was. I was pleasantly surprised. Oh, I'm always pleasantly surprised when I see really good chemistry between age gap. And it's just, it was just one of the, but I've noticed that as she's matured, as she's gotten more writing, more books under her belt, she has gotten a hell of a lot better. And I love seeing writers progress like that, especially when I have pretty much everything they've ever written. I'm just like, yep, definitely better. Yep, totally going on the up and up. Okay, good. When's the next one?
She also writes beautifully, like her words and her sentences and the way she actually constructs the story is beautiful. I love writers who can do that for me, because a good story is great and good chemistry is great, but not every writer can add that sort of oomph with the actual sentences and the construction and the word use.
That's what I loved about Second Chances, was that the writing was so natural. Like the conversations between Mac and Charlie, they have that familiarity between two women who knew each other years ago, but they also have that, awkwardness of, do I want to get involved with this person in any way, shape, or form in the now because of what happened and everything. But it also does a really good job of showing the progression of that awkwardness into friendship, into intimacy so well. It's like, I think another one of my favorite scenes is when they were walking back after the football game and they just have that easy conversation. And it's like, this is after they've already cleared the air about, what happened, why they broke up and everything. So you can tell Mac is starting to come around to the idea of friendship at least. And she starts allowing Charlie to kind of have that conversation, those lovely little moments that just show that they do still care about each other and that there is a possibility for a future, even if, they're not totally able to see that yet. So I just love those moments. And like I said, the whole flirting scenes in the office are just still some of my favorites.
There's definitely something magical about good flirting. Like, flirting, I think, must be one of the more difficult things to write. That and sex scenes, because you have to have, I don't know, magic fingers or something to be able to, like, really create amazing ones. Because it can fall really flat and just become silly.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's always a risk I find, especially with flirting scenes, because it's like, well, we already see the chemistry. Why are we going through this whole, charade of flirting, But I think Duncan does a really good job of setting it up, because she has outside influences for both Mac and Charlie. They have these really great friends that they can talk to. And I think even Charlie says, I'm so in love with her, but I know she won't even give me the time of day when it comes to that. And I'm sorry, MJ, I'm forgetting Charlie's best friend's name right now. And I feel bad about that. But it's still like, it's barely 8:00 in the morning. So that's my excuse. But yeah, he just asked her, flat out. It's like, what did you do to win her the first time? And she's like, well, I did charming little things. Like I put notes on her door. I did this. I brought her lunch, and everything. He's like, well, you might have to do that again. And I think that's just such a simple thing, but at the same time, it's so complicated because that Mac's probably going to catch on to it and she's going to figure it out. And it's like, okay, how's she going to respond? Is she going to allow her to continue? Or is she going to put a stop sign on it right away saying, you know what, I know what you're doing. You need to stop. And luckily Mac still has feelings for Charlie. So she does allow it to continue. And that's what allows the whole relationship to progress. And I love it so much because it is, being in love with somebody, yes, it's about the big stuff, the big I love yous, the big I this and that. but it's also about the little things the other person is willing to do for you. And I think Charlie shows that very well.
Absolutely. It's those small moments that make it real.
Yeah, and it actually shows that the relationship will last if that person is willing to do those little things for you early on, and vice versa, and if they're willing to do those little things for each other, I think.
Thank you for being an awesome listener and supporting Tilt, the channel that brings you all the podcasts you want to hear. You're listening to Tilt. Find more podcasts on thelesbiantalkshow.com. Which brings me to your second choice, which is truly a classic. And I think 3 reviewers actually marked this as a reread for themselves. So
it's a very popular one.
And I can see why. So it's Starting from Scratch by Georgia Beers. Always
a good one. I mean, whenever anybody... And this is the things like we do on Twitter. It's like, hey, anybody have any recommendations or stuff like that? That's the first one I always say is like, you need to read this. Totally. I remember when it wasn't the first Georgia Beers book I read. It was actually, I read A Little Bit of Spice was the first one I read. And I was like, okay, I like the author's writing. So I went back to her through her backlog and I was just like, okay, what else, is it? And this, honestly, the synopsis totally stood out with me because it was like, this is kind of like a romantically awkward woman who has a total crush on, somebody in her daily life, but she would never in a million years go up to her and say, hey, let's go out. And I'm like, that is totally me. I need to read this book. I totally need to read this book. And I was surprised to see it was in first person because I think that was the first person book I ever read, but it didn't throw me. And I really just enjoyed, it's like, okay, totally me, socially awkward, when it comes to like being romantically involved. And I really just enjoyed, like, she was very charming. She's very, the lead character is very charming. She's very charismatic and she has a lot of wit to her. And I think it just kind of helps, hide that. And the situation kind of presented itself where she gets, asked by her best friend to help. Hey, I need an assistant coach on my t-ball team. And that's how she ends up meeting the woman of her dreams. And it's like, oh crap. Oh yeah. And her dog, Steve, Steve kind of, put it out there too and everything. But gotta love Steve. Gotta love a good dog, honestly. And it's just fun to watch it, she kind of has this, like, the way she broke up with her last girlfriend isn't the greatest, she kind of told a little lie. And unfortunately that lie comes and bites her in the butt, at some point and everything. But those are the kind of conflicts I like, where it's like, it's not some grand, overly like, really this would happen in real life. It was just kind of like, I said something stupid to get out of a relationship. And she explains this, which I love even better. She explains this to like her love interest. And it's like, and she's like, I said something stupid to get out of a relationship. It wasn't what I technically meant at the time. But at the time she hadn't had a lot of, experience with kids either, but getting to know Max, getting to, know the kids on the t-ball team. She realized kids are actually something she could see herself doing. And it's like, it just goes to also show that, opinions change over time. So what you may say to somebody in a really stupid situation, I will always call it a stupid thing to say to somebody, period. It's like, I don't want to have kids because I don't want to be with you anymore, basically. Can really just, your mind can change as you get put in those situations that allow you to have those. And I love the relationship with her grandmother. I thought that was great. I cried when the grandmother died. I'll put that out there. Sorry, spoiler alert. It kind of has to happen because it does set up for a great conversation, a great interaction with bringing her love interest back and to like have those moments again. But yeah, it's definitely one of those. I mean, honestly, it's like, yes, I reread sex scenes. I'll admit it. But for this book, I go to that last little bit where it's like she's being consoled after her grandmother dies. And then she asks the very important questions like, why are you still here? You know, it's like, yeah, my grandmother died. I appreciate all you're doing for me, you know, helping me, you know, get the funeral arrangements, helping me clean out this, helping me do that. But why are you still here? And she's like, well, I was told by my ex that I was being an idiot. And I was like, yes, somebody said it. Thank you. Because I can understand her reaction to being like, you said you didn't want kids, and yet here I have with my child and everything. But she didn't allow her to explain. So yeah, it's like, okay, sometimes you need an outsourced source. So if anything, that was the only reason I didn't want first person. Because I wanted to see that conversation with her ex. Her ex just flat out telling her, you're being an idiot right now. And I was like, if this ever got made into a movie, we're going to have that scene. Period. That's what we're going to do.
I wish listeners could see your face right now when you're talking about these books, because you just light up.
I love them so much. They're just so great, you know? And like I said, that's the reason I reread them all the time. It's like, I may not always have the time to sit down and read them all again, because, you know, my book list is still, I think I have like 50 books I still need to read, and I still add more, you know? But it's like on those nights when I'm just like, you know what, I think I'm going to revisit this scene between either Mac and Charlie, or this one over here where she's baking after her grandmother dies, and it's like Max comes over, sweetest kid I've ever read in a book. I give top notch and everything. He is the sweetest kid, and he does the best thing anybody can do in that situation, where he just keeps her company while she's baking, and then when he finds out what happened, he just hugs her around the waist. I'm like, oh, I want to reread that again, you know? That's what I do.
He is adorable, I agree. And the dog, completely agree.
Oh, yeah. Gotta love the dog.
And the baking and the way Beers incorporated the food into the narrative was genius.
Yes. She didn't make it as like, you know, the whole, oh, she just likes baking. You know, she actually had it as a connection to her grandmother. It's like, this is what we did. You know, when I was feeling down or when we were feeling happy and we just wanted to put our hands to good use, this is what we did. And I love that connection more than anything else. And it even shows in her grieving process. That's what she does. She just kept baking and kept baking. And it's like, that's when Mac's like, are you having a party? You know, and she's like, no, my grandmother died. And it's like, you can tell the kid is just like, I don't know what to do entirely, but he just does the only thing he can do, which is hug her. And I just love the description that she puts about what's like going through her mind and everything. It's like, that's exactly what she needed right then and there. And then, of course, like a few minutes later, you know, after she sends Max home, it's like his mom shows up, and then she just crumbles right then and there. And that's when it all starts coming back together again.
She starts teaching Max to bake, though, doesn't she, at some point?
Yeah, she does. He comes over because of the dog, of course. And she just says, you know, yeah, this is what we're doing. This is what I'm doing. And she uses him as like a sous chef, basically. And he really gets into it. And so that way, when we get like to the epilogue, you can see that it's totally still with him. You know, I don't remember right off the bat if she actually has a scene where they're baking together in the epilogue, but from the way she talks about Max, like, because she's sitting there pregnant and everything, and he's like turned into a really good young man. You can tell that the baking is still kind of with them, that it's still their thing, which I totally was like, yes, thank you for letting them keep that. I feel that, you know, it just really just shows that they still have that bond, and I love that.
And what she got from her grandmother, she's passing on, which I just thought was beautiful too.
Oh yeah, totally. And yeah, the fact that in the epilogue she's pregnant, you know, they're going to have a child together. That shows definitely that she's gotten over her anxiety about having kids and everything. And I think, again, it was one of those things where it's like, she did want it. She just didn't want it with that specific person. So she told a stupid lie again. But again, you know, sometimes the things we say come back and bite us, and that introduced the conflict that they needed to kind of show that they've been able to resolve and be able to move past it. So, yeah.
Absolutely. If people have not read either of these books, which should they start with and which would they do second?
Oh my God. If I had to choose, if I'm going based off now, I would choose Second Chances, just because there is some holiday stuff in there. So if anybody's looking for like a decent holiday read, Second Chances would be the one. Outside of that, oh man, I honestly don't think I could choose because they're so well written. Both of them have really good like stories that I love to read again, reread over and over again. And both of them are just so easy. Like I think I read Starting from Scratch in 2 days. I think I read Second Chances in 4, and that was only because I had to work, but I guarantee I would have just sat there and kept turning page after page after page because it's just so great, you know. But yeah, I honestly I'm sorry. I mean, like I said, holiday season, go with MJ. Totally go with MJ. That's the best one because like I said, there's holiday stuff. But outside of that, no, I'm not going to choose.
So how about it? We say, if you feel like baking a gorgeous kid a puppy that you will never forget, go with Starting from Scratch.
Yes.
A sweet, getting back together, charming, lots of flirting romance, go with the MJ Duncan.
Yes, those are good qualities. That's how you separate it. Yes, right there.
Anna, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Okay, so where can people find you online if they want to connect with you?
They can find me on Twitter at agramlich78. I'm also on Facebook. I have a professional Facebook page called Anagram Sound. If anybody needs any sound services, give me a look up there. Otherwise, it's Anna Gramlich. That's my personal page. So
cool. I will add links to the show notes. So anybody wants to connect with Anna, you go right ahead. She's great. I suggest everyone does that.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for tuning into the special TLR podcast series, where we have been chatting about our favorite rereads. To support the work TLR and Tilt do, please make sure to use our buy links for Amazon or become a patron. Using our buy links gives us a small commission on purchases you make on Amazon within 24 hours of clicking the link. Becoming a patron means you get exclusive content. Go to patreon.com/thelesbianreview for more.